Gaming just had one of those weeks where the headlines look separate until you step back and see the pattern. Steam Deck got way more expensive. Warzone started cutting off PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. A PlayStation 5 exclusive got delisted and is heading toward shutdown. Fable moved to 2027. Unreal Engine 6 suddenly showed up through Rocket League. Dragon Quest restarted its biggest upcoming game from scratch. The Witcher's future got more exciting and more complicated at the same time, and 007 First Light became the cleanest win in the room. That is not random. That is the industry moving into its next phase. Higher costs, older platforms being left behind, big franchises resetting, new tech raising expectations, and players being asked to keep up. So this is not just a weekly news recap. This is the GamePulse Central briefing on where gaming is going next, what actually matters, and what players should be paying attention to right now. Let's get into it. This is GamePulse Central. Here is the big picture. This week was not about one giant reveal, it was about transition. And transition weeks are important because they show you what the industry values before the marketing spin gets polished. Hardware companies are testing how much players will pay. Live service games are showing how fragile digital access can be. Major studios are delaying or restarting projects instead of forcing them out. Publishers are rethinking platform strategy, and technology companies are already teasing the next engine leap, while a lot of current generation games are still fighting performance problems. That is the theme today. Gaming is moving forward, but forward does not always mean better for players. Sometimes it means more expensive, sometimes it means less access, sometimes it means more waiting, and sometimes it means the right game hits at exactly the right time. So let's start where players feel it first, the wallet. Valve raising the price of the Steam Deck OLED by hundreds of dollars is one of those stories that cuts straight through the noise. Because this is not just about one handheld getting more expensive. This is about the cost of staying current. The Steam Deck helped prove that players wanted real games in a portable format, not mobile spin-offs, not watered-down companion apps, not just cloud streaming, real PC games on a handheld with the flexibility to play wherever you are. That idea is not niche anymore. Handheld gaming is becoming one of the most important battlegrounds in the industry. Steam Deck is there, Switch 2 is there, ROG Ally style devices are there, Xbox handheld rumors keep floating around. Cloud gaming is still trying to prove itself, and the question for players is getting very simple. How much are you willing to pay for flexibility? Because that is the new premium. Not just better graphics, not just higher frame rates, convenience, portability, access, the ability to take your library with you. But when the price jumps, the value conversation changes immediately. GamePulse take: handheld gaming is getting more important, but it is also getting less casual as a purchase. That is the problem. The more these devices cost, the more players are going to ask whether they are buying freedom or just buying another expensive platform to maintain. And that premium hardware tax is exactly why subscription services are being forced to work twice as hard to keep you inside their walls. Look at PlayStation Plus this week. Grounded, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, and Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 joining PlayStation Plus is not the loudest story, but it fits the larger platform battle perfectly. If hardware gets more expensive, services have to feel more valuable. Grounded being part of the lineup matters because Xbox games on PlayStation no longer feel shocking. Darktide gives co-op players a heavier option. All-Star Brawl 2 gives families and party game players something easy to jump into. That is the push and pull right now. Hardware prices go up, subscription libraries get more aggressive, and platforms are fighting to convince players that staying inside their ecosystem is still worth it. But price is only one side of the transition. The other side is rougher, because sometimes moving forward means leaving people behind. Call of Duty Warzone being delisted and shut down on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is a major symbolic moment because Call of Duty has been one of the biggest cross-generation anchors in gaming. It is massive, it is free to play, it has a huge install base, and it is built around keeping as many players connected as possible. So when Warzone starts moving off PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, that tells you the industry is done pretending last-gen support can last forever. From a development standpoint, this probably makes sense. Older hardware hardware creates limits. It affects performance, it affects updates, it affects asset budgets, it affects loading, it affects what developers can build without constantly pulling the experience backward. But from the player side, this still stings, because not everyone has moved on. Not everyone can casually buy new hardware, and when a live game becomes part of your routine, losing access does not feel like a normal upgrade cycle. It feels like the game left without you. GamePulse take: Warzone leaving last gen is not just a technical decision, it is a signal. The cross-gen safety net is finally tearing. And then you have Destruction All-Stars. A PlayStation 5 exclusive being delisted and heading towards shutdown is not exactly shocking, because that game never became the breakout multiplayer hit Sony needed it to be. But that is why the story matters. It is another example of the live service trust problem. Players are not skeptical of live service games because they hate multiplayer. They are skeptical because they have watched too many games arrive like the future and disappear like experiments. You can download them, you can invest time, you can maybe even enjoy them, and then eventually support ends, servers close, and the whole thing becomes another cautionary tale. GamePulse take: every shutdown makes the next live service pitch harder to believe. That is the cost of this model. And then there is Fable. Fable moving to February 2027 is a very different kind of story. This is not a shutdown, this is not a delisting, this is pressure management. Xbox needs Fable to land, not just release, land. The franchise has nostalgia, the trailer attention is there, the expectations are high, but Fable has been gone for a long time, and Xbox's first-party slate still needs consistent wins that feel undeniable. So honestly, the delay might be the right move. I would rather Fable move into 2027 than get forced into a crowded window before it is ready. But the delay still fits the theme. Big games are taking longer, old platforms are being cut, live service projects are vanishing, and publishers are being forced to make harder decisions in public. So yes, the industry is moving forward, but the next question is whether the technology leading that future is actually ready for the pressure. Epic revealing Unreal Engine 6 through a Rocket League teaser is one of the most fascinating stories of the week. Not because we know everything yet, we do not. The teaser showed real-time Rocket League cars rendered in Unreal Engine 6, but it is still unclear whether this points to a new Rocket League game, a major update, or simply a technology preview. But that uncertainty is exactly why the story matters, because Unreal Engine 5 has already become one of the defining tools of this generation. It powers huge games, it creates incredible lighting and scale, it gives developers a serious visual toolkit. But players have also seen the other side: shader stutter, optimization issues, heavy system requirements, beautiful demos that do not always translate into smooth gameplay. So when Unreal Engine 6 shows up, the player-first question is not just how good does it look. The real question is, what problem does it solve? Does it make development easier? Does it improve performance? Does it scale better across console, PC, and handheld? Does it help developers ship cleaner games? Or is it just the next big technology label that looks incredible in a teaser but creates another arms race? GamePulse take: new engines are exciting in trailers, they only matter when players get better games. Better performance, better worlds, better tools, better stability. Because right now, the industry does not just need prettier tech, it needs tech that helps games actually ship well. And that brings us to role-playing games, because this week, some of the biggest role-playing franchises in the world made it clear that the future is being rewritten in real time. Dragon Quest XII being restarted from scratch is one of the biggest role-playing game stories of the week. Because this is not a small side project, this is Dragon Quest, one of the most important role-playing game franchises ever made. The game was originally announced years ago as Dragon Quest XII: The Flames of Fate, with a darker tone and a larger emphasis on player choice. Now that version has been reset, renamed, and reintroduced as Dragon Quest XII: Beyond Dreams, and that creates two reactions at once. First, respect, because I would rather a studio admit a direction was not working than quietly drag a troubled project through years of vague updates. If the game needed to restart, then restart it. Protect the franchise, protect the quality. Do not force out a mainline Dragon Quest that the team does not believe in. But second, concern, because restarting a mainline Dragon Quest from scratch is not a small thing. That means something major was not clicking. Maybe the darker tone was too far from what Dragon Quest is supposed to be. Maybe the team could not settle on how modern the series should become. Maybe the original original vision sounded better in concept than it felt in practice. Whatever the reason, this is a reset, and resets can save games, but they also usually mean the finish line is farther away than fans want. GamePulse take: Dragon Quest XII restarting is both encouraging and concerning. Encouraging because Square Enix is protecting the game. Concerning because a project this important does not restart unless the old version had real problems. The smart part is that Square Enix did not leave Dragon Quest fans with only bad news. A new Dragon Quest Monsters game was announced. Dragon Quest XI's is coming to Switch too, and that matters because it keeps Dragon Quest active while the mainline future rebuilds. That is franchise management. Keep the audience warm, keep the name visible, give fans something to play while the biggest game finds its new identity. Dragon Quest is restarting to protect its future. The Witcher is doing something different. It is trying to accelerate its future. The Witcher news is almost the opposite of Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is slowing down and restarting. The Witcher is speeding up and expanding. First, The Witcher 3 is getting a new expansion starring Geralt called Songs of the Past, and it is launching next year. That is wild. The Witcher 3 originally launched in 2015. Most games from 2015 are not still getting major new content more than a decade later, but The Witcher 3 is different. That world still has pull. Geralt still has pull. And CD Projekt Red knows that bringing players back to The Witcher 3 is one of the easiest ways to rebuild excitement before the next era fully arrives. But then the other side of the story is even bigger. CD Projekt Red's leadership says the studio wants to release 3 Witcher games across a 6-year period, and because of that, players should not expect Witcher 4 expansions in the same way they got expansions for The Witcher 3. That is a major shift. The old Witcher 3 model was one massive game, then beloved expansions. Hearts of Stone, Blood and Wine. Those expansions were not small side content. They became part of the game's legacy. Now the future sounds more like a trilogy pipeline. Instead of one giant game with major expansions, the plan may be 3 full Witcher games moving at a faster pace. GamePulse take: that is exciting, but it is also risky, because players love the idea of getting more Witcher more often. But they also remember why The Witcher 3 mattered. It was not just big, it was rich. It had time to breathe. Its expansions felt meaningful because they were crafted with care. So the question becomes, can CD Projekt Red move faster without making The Witcher feel thinner? That is the real story. Dragon Quest is restarting because the old future did not work. The Witcher is accelerating because the next future cannot wait. Different strategies, same pressure. Role-playing games are too big, too expensive, and too important to drift anymore. But while some studios are restarting, delaying, or planning years ahead, one game already delivered the simplest win of the week. Bond showed up. In a week full of delays, shutdowns, price hikes, engine teases, and franchise resets, 007 First Light is the cleanest win on the board. The game has already sold over 1 million copies, and that matters because this is the simple version of success. The pitch made sense, the license made sense, the studio made sense, and players showed up. A James Bond game from IO Interactive always had a clean logic behind it. This is the Hitman team. They understand stealth, they understand systems, they understand player choice. They understand how to make levels feel like playgrounds instead of hallways. So when that team takes on Bond, players immediately understand why it could work. That does not guarantee success. A famous license gets attention. It does not automatically earn trust. But this was the right license with the right studio fit at the right moment. GamePulse take: 007 First Light is the reminder that players still reward clarity. Not every game needs to be a live service platform. Not every game needs a 10-year roadmap. Not every game needs to explain itself through a spreadsheet. Sometimes the strongest pitch is simple. Here is a character people know. Here is a studio that makes sense. Here is the fantasy. Go play. And in a messy transition week, that kind of clarity stands out. So before we close, here is the quick GamePulse watch list coming out of all this. Quick hits. If you are on PlayStation Plus, Grounded is the most important addition to watch because Xbox games on PlayStation are becoming normal, and that platform shift is not slowing down. If you are still on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, Warzone is the warning sign. More live games may start making the same call. If you care about Xbox first party, Fable moving to 2027 makes the next Xbox showcase more important, not less. If you are into role-playing games, Dragon Quest XII is exciting, but it is clearly not close. The short short-term move is watching how Square Enix keeps the franchise active around it. If you are watching CD Projekt Red, The Witcher 3 expansion is the emotional headline, but the 3-game plan is the business story. If you care about tech, Unreal Engine 6 is worth watching, but do not get lost in demo hype until we know what it actually means for real games. And if you want the momentum pick, it is 007 First Light. That is the game with the clearest win right now. So here is the final take. The biggest story this week is not just Steam Deck getting more expensive. It is not just Warzone leaving old consoles. It is not just Fable moving to 2027. It is not just Dragon Quest XII restarting. It is what all of those stories say together. Gaming is moving into its next phase, and that next phase is not cheap, not simple, and not always player friendly. Some of it is exciting. New engines are coming. New hardware is shaping the market. Role-playing franchises are making big long-term moves. Bond proved a focused licensed game can still hit hard. Subscriptions are getting stronger, and big studios are taking more time instead of forcing games out before they are ready. But some of it is frustrating. Older consoles are being left behind. Live service games are disappearing. Hardware prices are climbing. Major games are taking longer, and players are being asked to keep spending, keep upgrading, keep waiting, and keep trusting. That is why this briefing matters, not because every headline was massive on its own, but because together they show an industry in transition. The question is whether that transition gives players better games or just more expensive problems. So now I want to hear from you. Are you willing to pay the premium to keep up with this next-gen transition, or are publishers starting to price players out of the hobby? Drop your take in the comments, because I think this question is going to define the next few years of gaming. And if you want weekly gaming news that does more than read headlines, if you want the player-first briefing on why these stories actually matter, subscribe to GamePulse Central. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.